is Senator Emerson, SB 780.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Senate Bill 780, as we all know, driving under the influence is a dangerous situation to everyone on our streets and highways. Unfortunately, our current DUI penalties are not strict enough for repeat offenders. This bill is an important public safety measure that would strengthen the penalties for people who repeatedly drive under the influence of alcohol. For instance, under current law, if an individual is convicted of driving under the influence and then 10 years later the same person is convicted of yet another DUI, it is considered as their first offense. This bill would eliminate the 10-year washout period, which would allow enhanced penalties for multiple DUI convictions, regardless of the amount of time between convictions. Additionally, the law requires 4 convictions for DUI without injury in a 10-year period of time in order for an offender to potentially be charged with a felony. Having 4 DUI convictions within 10 years is indefensible, so this bill would allow but not require the offender to be charged with a felony after the 3rd DUI without injury. Finally, when a drunk driver flees the scene and is charged with gross vehicular manslaughter or vehicular manslaughter with gross negligence, that individual can be charged with a 5-year prison sentence enhanced based on the fact that he or she fled the scene. However, the sentence enhancement does not apply if the person is ultimately charged with murder, despite the fact that murder is a more serious offense than manslaughter. This bill would allow for the sentence enhancement to be applied when a drunk driver flees the scene and is ultimately charged with murder. I understand this bill will be under the ROCA process, but I have from the District Attorneys Association, Corey Salzillo, to testify.
Madam Chair and members, Corey Salzillo on behalf of the California District Attorneys Association. Senator Emerson said it pretty well. It's clear how dangerous DUI is. We've come a long way over the years in making sure we have adequate penalties, but I think there are some changes that I think are worth at least pointing out and considering and maybe starting a dialogue on. We know that repeat offenders aren't the rule. They're the exception. But when we do have those, that's when we think the law needs to address the seriousness of their behavior. And it does to a degree, but the reality is right now you have to get 4 DUIs without injury in a 10-year period before you could even be charged with a felony. And we think that's just such dangerous behavior that, given the reality of the fact that someone who gets caught 4 times driving under the influence is much more likely to actually be driving under the influence more than just the times they get caught. The 10-year washout, we think it's appropriate that prior offenses be considered, regardless of how long ago they were. Everybody can make a mistake. It's, maybe understandable for someone to get 2 DUIs, but for a 3rd one, it's really hard to understand how that's just someone, making a mistake or screwing up. And finally, on the 5-year enhancement, that statute applies right now if you are convicted of vehicular manslaughter while intoxicated or vehicular manslaughter with gross negligence. And because of case law that permits a prosecutor to charge a person with a murder under the Watson case, a second-degree murder, it just makes sense to allow this enhancement to apply in the case of an offense that's much more serious than vehicular manslaughter. So we'd ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
In support? Are there witnesses in opposition?
Madam Chair, Ignacio Hernandez on behalf of the California Attorneys for Criminal Justice and also on behalf of the California DUI Lawyers Association, statewide association of attorneys that specialize in DUIs. Really our opposition is anchored in what the initial intent was of the 10-year washout, what we call the washout now. And that was to focus enhanced penalties on those individuals who are not just repeat offenders, but they are repeat offenders in a short period of time, meaning that current penalties are not working. Current requirements to go to, classes and fines, whatever else, it's not working. The person is not addressing his or her drinking problem. First it was, I think, 5 and then 7 years. We said, we have to treat these individuals differently than someone who perhaps made two mistakes or 3 mistakes over a 50-year period. There was a distinction. As we expand it out, we're now changing that. And if we take out the 10-year washout completely, what we're saying is that someone who has 4 offenses within a year or 2, and we've seen it happen, are going to be treated the same as someone who was an alcoholic 30 years ago, had 3 offenses, and then has 1 more offense after. Let's say the Raiders finally win the Super Bowl, and they get hit for a .10. They're not the same. So for those reasons, we're opposed. If it ever gets out of ROCA, we will continue to work in opposition. Thank you.
Libby Sanchez on behalf of the California Public Defenders Association. For the reasons previously stated, we're also in opposition. We just have grave concern about the philosophy behind basically telling people that they're not rehabilitatable. We believe that existing law addresses situations where repeat offenders need to be penalized more seriously than single offenders, but to basically take away somebody's driver's license forever and say, hey, there's no helping you, and relegate someone like that to a life of, not being able to drive doesn't make sense, particularly when the punishment just doesn't fit the crime. For those reasons, we're opposed.
Are other speakers in opposition? Are there any questions or comments from the committee? This bill is a ROCA bill. We've discussed it with the author and the sponsor, and we will hold it in committee. You can request a vote only at a later time if you wish, but we'll not be voting on it today.
Can I make one clarification, Madam Chair? Not about the disposition of the bill, but the bill itself, notwithstanding the ROCA policy and what the committee is going to do, does not have any effect on how long a person loses their driver's license for, and that it doesn't change how long, if there's a permanent. There was a bill last year that dealt with if you have 3 offenses in 10 years, or it's 3 offenses, you can lose your license for 10 years, but this does not affect that. Just
Okay,
a
you
matter
might
of
want to
clarification.
clarify that with speakers in opposition. Okay, that concludes the work of the committee. We might want to have some add-ons. We do have one bill on call, and that is SB 248 by Senator Weiland. But all the...
So you want to lift the calls.
So I can...
Extension. Just lift the call.
So we'll lift the call on SB 248.
Senate Bill 248. Price.
Just what do you say after that? It's fake. So it's 3 to 1.
Okay.
No.
Pardon me?
Yeah, he has not voted, but
What is
Senator
the,
Weiland did ask for reconsideration. So
All right, thank you.
we're
What is the
prepared to
committee's
grant
policy
that.
on the pro tem being able to add on after the committee hearing, as he can
Senator
on the floor?
Harmon, pursuant to Senate rules, the pro tem and the minority leader both can add on to votes after the committee has concluded, as long as it does not affect the outcome of the bill.
And what's the status on Senator Weiland's bill right now if the pro tem were to add on?
The pro tem adding on would put the bill out, Senator. So it
he
would not
cannot
be
add-
permitted,
He cannot
correct?
add on pursuant to the rule you cited.
Correct.
All right, so this bill is not passing, is that
Right,
correct?
this bill, the bill has failed and reconsideration has been granted.
Thank you.
So it fails 3 to 1.
Yes. It fails 3 to 1
Reconsideration.
and reconsideration is granted.
And that concludes.
That concludes the work of the committee today, and the committee is adjourned.